So we're going to look at example number 5. A line segment has an endpoint 8, 3. If the midpoint of the line segment is 2, 7, what are the other coordinates of the endpoint? So this question is framing this idea in a different way. It gives you the endpoint. Now I'm going to call this endpoint A. And I'm going to call this midpoint M. A line segment has endpoint 8, 3. If the midpoint of the line segment is 2, 7, what are the coordinates of the other endpoint? So before tackling this in an algebraic way, I'm going to use another app to simply help us out in this regard. If we put this on the Cartesian plane, I just want to make sure that I got it right here. Yeah, 8, 3. Good. If we put it on the Cartesian plane, I have a endpoint A. I have a midpoint M. And as we could see, if basically what's going on here is I have this line that is going, and it's going to look something like this. If it starts at A and it has to go through a midpoint M, the endpoint is going to be somewhere around there. But really, where? Well, it's going to be okay here. Stick with me. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the concept that if I travel A to M, so A to M, what's going to happen is as I move 6 units over in the x direction, in the negative x direction, I'm going to move 4 units up. So A to M, if this is halfway if M's the halfway point to some other endpoint B, well, all I have to do is move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just double check that, and I've actually made a small error, right? So if I move 2 and I move 6 units in the negative direction in my x, I end up with an x coordinate of negative 4. And if I move up, now negative 4, and if I move up 4 units again, I end up at B. What will this finally look like? Well, my B is my endpoint, and it should have the coordinates negative 4, 11. But if I were to draw, no, never mind, we'll get rid of this, however I can. Here we are. I'm just going to draw my line segment. I should really use a ruler, but that seems to make sense. So this is sort of geometrically what I'm trying to achieve. So if you are given one endpoint and you're given a midpoint, you can figure it out on the Cartesian plane. Let's get back to a more algebraic approach. Here we are. So I'm given my midpoint and I'm given one endpoint, but I do recall that my formula xm ym really is going to be equal to the x coordinate of one endpoint plus the x coordinate of the other endpoint divided by the y coordinates, the average of the y coordinates of my two endpoints. And really this formula that I've written for you is two formulas. One formula that is for the x coordinates. And it is really the midpoint of x is xa plus xb divided by 2. And the y midpoint is ya plus yb divided by 2. So very simply now, I have two formulas that might be able to help me out. Whenever you're dealing with a formula or an equation, it's important that you have one unknown per equation. So what am I able to pick up here? I'm able to pick up xa is equal to 8, ya is equal to 3. xm is equal to 2, ym is equal to 7. So what do you want to call the other endpoint? I don't know, let's just call it b. So I'm just going to plug in my values now for x. The x-coordinate, now I'm going to use this formula here. The x-coordinate of my midpoint is 2, is equal to xa plus xb. Since I don't know xb, I simply leave it as xb, it's the unknown, divided by 2. Now, I'm going to use the y-coordinate, and I'm going to have two very nice equations, I'm hoping. Ym, I'm going to use this one now, in red. Ym is 7, is equal to ya, which is 3, plus yb divided by 2. So now I have two very, very nice formulas that I can easily manipulate. This one will determine the x-coordinate of my endpoint. So, to solve equation number 1, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. What I end up getting is 2 times 2 is 4. On the right side of my equation, the factors of 2 cancel each other out, so I get 4 is equal to 8 plus xb. I'm not done though. 4 is equal to 8 plus xb. The next step algebraically, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. On the right side, plus 8 minus 8 cancel out. On the left-hand side, 4 minus 8 is going to be negative 4, and that is going to leave the xb coordinate. That's exactly what we found out. So now we know that the x-coordinate of my other endpoint is negative 4. So if you don't mind, I'm going to speed this up quite a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 2. The left-hand side of the equation turns into 14, 7 times 14. Now, the right-hand side is 3 plus yb over 2 times 2. I know that those two cancel each other out. So I'm just have 14 is equal to 3 plus yb. So I'm going to subtract 3 to both sides, and what I get is 14 minus 3 is 11, and the right-hand side is going to be yb. So the endpoint, I do have my x-coordinate, and that is negative 4. My y-coordinate is 11. So I have found my end point here. A little more algebraic and might give you some practice in algebra. Let's move on to the next example.